Today, I'm diving back into the dungeon, in particular, Delicious in Dungeon. I'm going to be making the SOULS Benedict, which looks like a ridiculous dish, and I'm going to make it more ridiculous, sir. Thanks to today's sponsor, Sword of Convallaria, for sponsoring today's video and their brand new Delicious in Dungeon collab, but I'm going to talk about that later. Now, I gotta make that bread. Realistically, if you're making this recipe at home, you can absolutely buy your own shokupan, but because we are senshi in a dungeon, we're gonna be making our own. First, I'm gonna be taking about 35 grams of all-purpose flour and mixing that with around 75 grams of water. This is actually the start of our tangjang. It's actually very hard for me to say, but what it really is a bit of flour and water that's cooked over a low heat to develop a ton of gluten and starch. This is going to make the bread incredibly voluminous, and it's used in a bunch of shokupan recipes. I love using this version of it because it's so easy to make. Once it looks goopy and a little slimy, this is actually done, but it has to cool down completely because you can't add it to the other ingredients if it's too hot. Next, I'm going to take 175 grams of milk and put it in the microwave for 30 seconds while I do the microwave dance, which is really important, otherwise the milk won't heat up. I'm heating up the milk to around 90 degrees Fahrenheit, just warm enough to start blooming my yeast. I'm adding 10 grams of yeast directly to my milk and making sure it's fully stirred together so this way the yeast is completely hydrated. This is a really good step to make sure that your yeast is active and this way it blooms properly. I like to take the milk and yeast and place it into my mixing bowl so this way it blooms here and I don't have to worry about scraping it in later. Just make sure you scrape all of it out first. Then I'm going to take 2 whole eggs and whisk them really well. This is going to go in the dough later, so it's better just to mix them now. Now after around 10 minutes, I can actually start working with my milk and yeast mixture. I'm going to add my tangjang directly to the bowl, followed by my 2 whole eggs. Since this is a straight dough, you can actually add everything in at once, but what I like to do is mix up my liquids a little bit with a fork so I don't have any clumps or lumps later on when I'm mixing this together. Once the liquids are broken down, I'm adding in 565 grams of all-purpose flour. Next is 30 grams of granulated sugar. This is super important because it does sweeten the bread a bit. The last 2 ingredients are 10 grams of salt and around 30 grams of butter. Just make sure the butter is slightly broken down. It doesn't have to be chopped up or melted, but just make sure it's broken down enough to mix in properly. Now I'm going to be putting this into my mixer on a really low speed and then watch it freak out because it's possessed by a demon or something. But just make sure it's low speed for about 3 to 4 minutes. So this way everything starts to come together. This step is called the hydration step. And what it's meant to do is incorporate all of the ingredients without forming too much gluten initially. Once it looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, I like to take the bowl off of the mixer and start scraping any flour that may have been left on the bottom. Sometimes it doesn't get picked up, so you really want to make sure that all of it's scraped from the bottom of the bowl. Now I can place this back onto my mixer and start increasing the speed to start forming the dough into a nice ball. This does have to happen in stages and it does take a few minutes, but once that ball of dough starts slapping the sides of the bowl, this is when you can give it a few more scrape and spins. I do this a couple of times just to make sure that all of the flour is completely incorporated into the dough. After your few scrape and spins, this is where we give it the good old slap and fold. I love the terms with making bread. These are literally the terms that I've used professionally. The slap and fold actually incorporates more gluten back into the dough and helps build all of those bonds, but it also makes it to where you can play with the dough and make sure it's the right consistency and texture. I like to do the window pane test just to make sure that the dough doesn't separate when I pull it apart, and then I form it into this beautiful boule, grab myself a massive bowl because this does proof quite a bit, grease it up, throw a lid on it, and this has to rest for 1 hour in a slightly warm environment. I use a microwave with a hot cup of water. After an hour, look at this plump boy. This is more plump than senshi after a good day. A good test to do is make sure you poke the dough. If the dough doesn't bounce back, it's ready. I'm placing this onto my cutting board so I can start working with it. Now, if you're not going to do this next step, you can actually roll the dough up into whatever shape you want and bake it in whatever pan you want. But because I'm trying to make it close to the anime, I'm actually going to be cutting the dough into 6 equal portions. This way I can roll these individually. The 6 equal portions are going to be determined by how much overall dough you have, and mine came out to about 75 grams of each portion. Once I have those 6 equal portions, this is where I'm going to start forming them. I've actually never used this technique before, and I'm kind of making it up on the fly, but it reminds me of making sweet rolls or cinnamon rolls. You just want to make sure that your dough is nice and tight and that the edges are really clean. This way you have a nice even bake. You're going to repeat this process with all of the dough that you have, and once you have all of these ready, we can start placing this into a Pullman pan. This is the same pan I would have used if I would have baked the bread as a a whole loaf versus how I'm doing it right now. So you're going to be using the same pan. Just make sure that pan is greased really well. Just a bit of pan spray goes a long way in later. Now place the dough into this container and make sure that they're really close together. The goal is to make sure that there isn't too much space between the rolls. Now we do have to egg wash the bread before it rises. This is just one whole egg with a little bit of half and half. Egg washing before it rises is really important because if you try to egg wash it later, it may tear the dough if it's already proofed. Now this is going to proof for 1 hour until it's about doubled in size once again. This is what you want your dough to look like. It's crested just about 3/4 of the way up the pan. Not all the way up the pan, just about 3/4. This is going to bake in the oven for around 45 minutes at 350 degrees. And while this dough is baking, I get to tell you about today's sponsor, Sword of Convallaria, and their collaboration with Delicious in Dungeon. From August 29th to September 25th, the world of tactical JRPGs is getting a delicious twist with the Dungeon Meshi collab event. You can summon Marcel and Fallen with 50% off of your first 10 pulls, and you're guaranteed to get the featured collab legendary character within 100 pulls. Seriously, you don't want to miss out on this Delicious in Dungeon event. And here's the best part. Complete the time-limited quests and you'll unlock the collab legendary character Senshi, absolutely free. Everyone wants Senshi. I want to be Senshi. There's also a brand new collab story. The Laios squad teams up with familiar allies to explore a mysterious dungeon, cooking up some unique monster-based dishes that strengthen their bonds just like in the anime. Each bite brings them closer to the truth, a dungeon shaped by fragments of memory and longing, and to the heartfelt banquet that restores a chef's forgotten dream. Imagine not fulfilling Senshi's dreams. Just by logging in and completing quests, you can claim abundant summon resources to boost your adventure. The collab kicks off August 29th, so click the link below, download Sword of Convallaria, and join Marcel, Fallen, and Senshi for a tactical JRPG feast you won't forget. Thank you to Sword of Convallaria for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to this SOULS Benedict. Are you guys ready for this? Look at this beautiful bread. It's a little uneven if you can see the top of it, but that doesn't really matter because Senshi made this in a cave. Is that from Iron Man? The one thing I do like to make sure is I pull the bread out around 195 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This way it will carry over cook. So right now this bread is 201 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty perfect. Now the other thing too is that we do want to remove this from the pan because if you leave it in the pan, it can continue to overcook. So in this case, I'm just gonna slide this bad boy out. Oh my goodness. Sheesh. It's so nice. Dear Lord. Here's the thing that I learned working in a bakery for about 2 years. You don't want to cut this right away. A lot of people think you should eat hot bread, but I don't think that's the case. When you cut into bread that's still hot, the proteins haven't had time to start forming properly. So when we used to sell our sourdough bread, we would never cut it fresh hot out of the oven because it would actually get mushy. The inside needs to cool so you get really nice slices of bread. So this has to cool. And I'm just gonna cool this until tomorrow and I'll have this for breakfast. So it's a 2-day project. Now it's the next day and my bread is ready to go. But admittedly, I had a slice for breakfast because it was taunting me. It smells so good. Okay, now let's make the rest of the SOULS Benedict, which is super simple. And I'm gonna show you a hack that I like using for hollandaise because I don't like hollandaise very much. So this is kind of how I tolerate hollandaise. If you also don't like hot mayo, you may really like this method. You're just gonna need a stick blender to make it happen. I'm taking 1 whole egg, putting it into a cup, and then taking about 30 grams of butter followed by 30 grams of olive oil, melting that down just enough to where the butter has loosened up. You don't wanna get this way too hot, otherwise it's just gonna cook weird. Now I do like to blend the egg ahead of time. This way it makes the process a little bit easier when everything's mixing together. I'm seasoning the egg with just a touch of lemon juice and then slowly drizzling in my olive oil butter mixture. This is sped up to 1000% so you know how slow I was going. After around 2 minutes, you have hollandaise, or what's kind of a hollandaise. You can pass this off as hollandaise to most people and they're not gonna know, and I actually really love the flavor this way. The next step is to poach off 2 eggs. I'm adding in around 2 tablespoons of vinegar to my hot water and then dropping in eggs 1 at a time, making sure that they don't stick to the bottom. A lot of the times when you poach eggs, they can sink to the bottom and get stuck, so just make sure you loosen them them up, otherwise they'll break when they cook. After a couple of minutes, the eggs are ready to pull out of the water. Poached eggs don't take too long at all, and you really only want to cook them for around 4 or 5 minutes, depending on the doneness. I like mine to be a nice medium rare. Now it's time to work with my thick bread. This is a big piece of bread, but you're probably going to need it if you're adventuring throughout all of the world of Delicious in Dungeon. Also, bread wasn't that readily available. I think Senshi only made it a couple of times, and even one of the times, the orcs were so impressed with it, they said it was their bread. And they were like, but we all made this together, so it's our together bread. And then they shared it. It was very sweet. Now to get the bread ready, I'm gonna put a few dabs of butter on the pan and I guess just move them around with your finger like a monster. Then place the giant piece of bread right on top of the butter. And then use this other technique that doesn't make any sense of taking a big block of butter, melting it on the pan, and then rubbing it on the top of the bread. So this way we have nice even buttering on both sides of the bread. After around 1 minute or so, the bread should be nice and toasted on one side. Give it a flip and toast the other side. This bread is golden and ready. Now in the anime, Senshi just basically takes the eggs, puts it on top of the bread, and tops it with the homemade hollandaise sauce. But I thought because the bread is so thick, what if we take it just a step further? Not to destroy Senshi's work, but just a little bit. Just a little bit. I don't know where he's going. Why are you taking a knife? What are you doing to the bread? This isn't operation. Oh my God, you're cutting the bread. We spent so long making this. What are you doing? It's already dead. What are you digging into it for? Okay, that's fine. What was the point of this? The inside of the bread is so good and it's already dead, man. Stop killing it. Okay, great. You dug a hole. What are you doing with that egg? Oh my God, you might actually be a genius. Oh my God, and the sauce is going inside too? What is happening? This is not how it's supposed to go. It's supposed to just be bread in the center. It's like a trap door filled with treasure. You can't even tell that there's an egg and hollandaise in there. But this just looks like a normal piece of toast now. Oh my God, the second egg just happened. We just got the second egg and more hollandaise. Is this a double yolk? Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, we have a double yolk happening in real time with extra hollandaise. Could you imagine if Laios actually was fed this from Senshi? He would lose his mind more than he already does. And this is Senshi's SOULS Benedict from Delicious in Dungeon with a little bit of a twist that I think even Senshi would appreciate. I promise once we cut into this thing, it's gonna look so sick. Oh, Gandalf, it's gonna look so fun. Admittedly, this is a massive amount of toast. Gandalf, this is so much toast. You can't be up here right now because I have a sharp knife and I gotta cook the breakfast, okay? I know, you smell eggs. Different way. I'm just gonna cut right down the middle. Let's just do this. Actually, we should cut the yolk first on top so we can see what that looks like. You ready? Let's see if I did it right. Oh, baby. Huh, Gandalf, doesn't that yolk look, you can't have this yolk. Look at that yolk. That's what you want. When Senshi had cut into the eggs on this, you got this beautiful golden release of the egg yolk all over the sauce and the bread. That just looks fantastic. So now imagine you're about to take a bite of this thing and you're in the middle of a dungeon and you say, oh man, this looks so great. Maybe you take a piece right off the end here and you just want to try it, you know? You're just gonna get a giant chunk of the bread with some of the sauce and some of the eggs and try this first. Cheers. Honestly, I do really like this version of hollandaise, mostly because it's not just straight up clarified butter, which is the normal style of hollandaise, and you get some of the flavor from the really good olive oil. But then imagine after the first bite, you're like, you know what, let's just cut this in half. Let's just go for it. And all of a sudden, you're met with treasure. You guys ready? I'm actually really excited to see what this cross section looks like. Let's do this. Oh my goodness. Look at this. This is a mess, but it looks freaking sick. Look at that center. Do you not want that? That looks amazing. That is so rich. That'll keep you going for days inside of a dungeon. This honestly looks ridiculous at this point, and I'm all about this. Delicious in Dungeon is an anime of ridiculous recipes, so I can get behind this. I actually think the SOULS Benedict might have been the most tame recipe that Senshi had made, but not anymore, because now it's just absolutely loaded. I'm gonna try to get now a double egg bite with Gandalf. No, this is mine. You can't have this. Cheers. Uh-oh. Buddy, you can't come up on the counter. The double egg, double sauce makes it way more luscious. Like, this is a treat, and I don't think it's a treat you should have often because it's so rich, but it's so good. Make sure you guys check out Swords of Convallaria at the link down below and get all of those really sweet, delicious in dungeon rewards. I love it when games collab with animes like this because it makes it way more fun to jump into that world. So if you want those rewards, use my link down below and download Swords of Convallaria today. My name is Chefpk, and remember, keep playing with your food.